If you're running a growing AWS environment, you already know that securing all your outbound traffic can be one of the toughest nuts to crack. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through the industry-standard architecture for solving this exact problem using Prisma Access. Let's dive in. So here's what we've got on tap. First, we're going to clearly define the challenge that everyone's facing. Then, we'll pull back the curtain on the golden architecture that the top enterprises are using right now. From there, we'll explore your three main technical options for building it, before we jump into a quick start guide for the most popular setup. By the end, you'll have a rock-solid blueprint.
Okay, so let's set the stage with the core problem. As your cloud footprint expands, and it always does, right, you're not just running one VPC anymore. You've got them for production, for dev, for shared services, and suddenly, securing all the traffic heading out to the internet, what we call egress traffic, becomes this massive, complicated challenge.
And that brings us to the big question that every single cloud and security architect has to answer. How do you get that single pane of glass, that unified visibility and control, without creating a huge performance bottleneck or a management nightmare? You know, the old school approach of just sticking a firewall here or there, it just completely falls apart in the cloud.
But here's the good news. The core concept here isn't some brand new, radical idea. It actually builds on the same logic we've been using for years, like connecting a traditional hardware firewall to AWS. We're just taking those proven, battle-tested principles and applying them in a modern, scalable, cloud-native way.
All right, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. And not just any solution. We're talking about the design that has become the de facto enterprise standard. This is what's known as the golden architecture for cloud egress security.
So this is what it looks like. Up at the top, you've got Prisma Access, living in the cloud. It connects down through two redundant tunnels to an AWS Transit Gateway, or TGW, right there in the middle. Now, you can think of that transit gateway as the central traffic hub for all of your VPCs. This design is just so elegant because it centralizes all of your routing and all of your security inspection into one logical spot.
Now, when you look at that diagram, one thing should really jump out at you: the emphasis on dual tunnels. You might be thinking, why two? Is one not good enough? Well, for any serious enterprise-grade deployment, the answer is no. Having two tunnels is absolutely non-negotiable.
It all boils down to two huge benefits: high availability and performance. High availability is the obvious one, right? If one tunnel or even a Prisma POP has an issue, traffic automatically fails over to the second one. No big deal. But here's where it gets really clever. With a protocol called Equal Cost Multipath, or ECMP, the architecture actively uses both tunnels at the same time, load balancing the traffic across them. So you get redundancy and a performance boost. It's truly the best of both worlds.
So how fast is that failover we were just talking about? Well, if you optimize your BGP timers, and we'll touch on that in a bit, the network can reconverge. It can figure itself out in as little as 3 seconds. That is incredibly fast. It's fast enough to make sure that active user sessions don't get dropped during a failover. This is exactly the kind of resilience that enterprises demand.
Okay, so we've got the what and the why of the architecture down. Now let's dig into the how. When it comes to actually building those tunnels between Prisma Access and AWS, you've really got three primary options to choose from.
And picking the right tool for the job is pretty important. IPsec with BGP is your reliable all-around workhorse. It's the perfect choice for most use cases. If you need some serious throughput, GRE can get you there, but just keep in mind you'd have to handle the encryption part yourself. And then for maximum performance, you've got TGW Connect, which is the premium AWS native solution designed for those really demanding SD-WAN integrations. Now, while TGW Connect is definitely the future, this chart right here tells the story of the present. A whopping 90% of enterprises today are using that first method, IPsec with BGP. And why is that? Simple. Because it's rock solid, it's universally supported, and frankly, it provides more than enough performance for most cloud egress scenarios. It is the proven, mainstream choice. So, given that it's so popular, we're going to focus our quick start guide on that exact method. Let's walk through the high-level steps you'd actually take inside the AWS console to get this all set up. All right, time to roll up our sleeves, conceptually at least. We're going to look specifically at the configuration you need to do on the AWS side of the house to get it connected up to Prisma Access. It really boils down to a 4-step process. First, you create a customer gateway, and for that, you just use the IP address and ASN that Prisma Access provides you. Second, you create the site-to-site VPN connection, and the great thing is AWS automatically generates both of those tunnels for you. Third, and this is super important, you configure your BGP timers. This is where you can tune that failover time down to our recommended 3 seconds. And finally, you just update your transit gateway route tables to point all the traffic to your new secure connection.
Now, I just mentioned ASN, so let's quickly define that. An autonomous system number is basically a unique ID that identifies a network for BGP routing. You can think of it like a postal code for a large network. AWS has its own default number, Prisma Access will have its own, and these two numbers are how they introduce themselves to each other and start dynamically exchanging routing information.
And that's really it. By following those steps, you have successfully built one of the most common and effective zero-trust architectures for securing cloud traffic. Every piece of data leaving your VPCs is now being fully inspected and secured by Prisma Access, and it's all done with that critical, built-in redundancy.
So, you've done it. Your tunnels are secure, they're resilient, but let me leave you with this final question. Are they fast enough? While 1.25 gigabits per tunnel is perfect for a lot of scenarios, what happens when your enterprise WAN needs to push 20 or even 40 gigabits of throughput? Well, that's the next level, and that's exactly where those high-performance solutions like TGW Connect really begin to shine.